Okay, now we're going to look at panning in our project. So panning essentially is a parameter that we can use to change how much of an instrument or a signal is heard in either the left or right speaker. So when we're thinking about a musical performance, we kind of have our sound stage. So if we're looking at our computer, we've got our sound stage, we've got the center sound stage, and then we've got the left and right, so going out to the edges. And when we're mixing our audio, we want to place our instruments across the sound stage, and this is what we call the stereo sound stage. We're going to look at this. We're going to use the chord progression that we originally produced, but what I've done is I've created a second MIDI channel and I've copied everything over, so it's all the same notes, the same effects chain, everything, but I've changed it slightly. So I've actually included an erosion effect, so this is kind of adding some noise to one of the chord progressions, and I've also changed the filter parameters a little bit so it sounds a bit different. So let's listen to both of these chord progressions, and we'll be able to hear the differences between the two. So that's the original. Now if we go to the new one, so you can hear it's got this bright buzziness about it. It's got a bit of distortion. Yeah, it's filtering differently, and so it's got a different texture. Now, when we layer up sounds in this way, we can start using our stereo soundstage to build up extra textures within our music and improve the overall sound. At the moment, when we've been producing our music, we've basically been sending all the sound down the center of our sound stage. And that's okay, but that's not how the professionals do it. If we listen to some professionally produced recordings with headphones on, you'll really be able to hear where certain instruments are placed around our sound stage. Okay, so let's have a look at what we can do. Over here, our pan parameter is on our master channel. So we have our volume controller, and then we've got this little dial here that can go either left or right. So essentially we can pull it down to the left, and that means that we'll only hear that audio signal in the left speaker. If I go all the way to the right, then we'll only hear it in our right speaker. If I play our bass line, I'm going to use the panning function to move the bass line around our sound stage. So put your headphones on and have a listen to this. So that's all the way to the right. Now I'll pull it all the way back to the left. Okay, so that's essentially what panning does. Now, if you listen to a good audio recording or a well-produced song, you'll hear certain instruments are down the center of the mix with certain other instruments placed around the center. And generally what we want is the vocals or our lead sound to be in the center, and we also want our bass line and kick drum to be in the center. Sometimes when we're recording our drums, you might hear the hi-hat slightly to the left and the snare slightly to the left, and then maybe other cymbals placed across the other side of the sound stage. And we can actually do that within our drum rack. You can see over here we can select different parameters for each of the different samples that we're playing back. Okay, so that's something that we can get into in more detail later. Right now, let's just look at our chord progression. So we've got the two of the same sounds. I've made them slightly different to each other so that we're going to get this interesting effect between the right and the left speaker. So it's just one example of how we might use panning. So let's listen to it all in the mix, and I will start moving things around. So that's all pretty much down the center. Okay. Now, That sound, the sound of the second chord progression, okay, it's a little too different. So what I might do is I might take the erosion effect out and just listen to it with the change filter and EQ. There we go. Might just change the way the delay is being affected. And with the drums now. So the way I have the panning set up is not hard left and hard right. I've essentially set up a little bit of a mix where you're still hearing each of the chord progressions in the left and right, but you're hearing, say, for instance, channel 1, you're hearing it mostly in the left, and then channel 2, you're hearing the same chord progression, but mostly in the right. And it creates this interesting layer of sounds when we play it back. There are a lot of different ways that we can use the panning, and it's a really important part of the mixing process when we're trying to produce our audio. So have a bit of a look at it. When you're producing your own tracks, make sure that you're thinking about where you want your instruments placed and how you want it to sound when it's played back through headphones. All right, once again, go to YouTube once you've watched this video. Have a look at how other artists are using, look for other tutorials. There's lots of resources out there for you to access and to learn more about. So enjoy.